Where globalization means, as it so often does, that the rich and powerful now have new means to further enrich and empower themselves at the cost of the poorer and weaker, we have a responsibility to protest, in the name of universal freedom. Never, never and never again, shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. As long as poverty, injustice and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. A good leader can engage in a debate frankly and thoroughly, knowing that at the end he and the other side must be closer, and thus emerge stronger. You don't have that idea when you are arrogant, superficial, and uninformed. There is no easy walk to freedom anywhere, and many of us will have to pass through the valley of the shadow of death again and again before we reach the mountaintop of our desires. Does anybody really think that they didn't get what they had because they didn't have the talent or the strength or the endurance or the commitment? There are times when a leader must move out ahead of the flock, go off in a new direction, confident that he is leading his people the right way. Communists have always played an active role in the fight by colonial countries for their freedom, because the short-term objects of communism would always correspond with the long-term objects of freedom movements. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. Then he becomes your partner. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender and other discrimination. If there are dreams about a beautiful South Africa, there are also roads that lead to their goal. Two of these roads could be named goodness and forgiveness. Without education, your children can never really meet the challenges they will face. So it's very important to give children education, and explain that they should play a role for their country. Our daily deeds as ordinary South Africans must produce an actual South African reality that will reinforce humanity's belief in justice, strengthen its confidence in the nobility of the human soul, and sustain all our hopes for a glorious life for all. There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile to continue talking about peace and non-violence against a government whose only reply is savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people. Running taught me valuable lessons. In cross-country competition, training counted more than intrinsic ability, and I could compensate for a lack of natural aptitude with diligence and discipline. I applied this in everything I did. There is nothing I fear more than waking up without a program that will help me bring a little happiness to those with no resources, those who are poor, illiterate, and ridden with terminal disease. I dream of the realization of the unity of Africa, whereby its leaders combine in their efforts to solve the problems of this continent. I dream of our vast deserts, of our forests, of all our great wildernesses. Any man or institution that tries to rob me of my dignity will lose. In countries where innocent people are dying, the leaders are following their blood rather than their brains. I detest racialism, because I regard it as a barbaric thing, whether it comes from a black man or a white man. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. There is no passion to be found playing small in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. After climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. Let there be work, bread, water and salt, for all. Where globalization means, as it so often does, that the rich and powerful now have new means to further enrich and empower themselves, at the cost of the poorer and weaker, we have a responsibility to protest in the name of universal freedom. I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. Even if you have a terminal disease, you don't have to sit down and mope. Enjoy life and challenge the illness that you have. Sabotage did not involve loss of life, and it offered the best hope for future race relations. Bitterness would be kept to a minimum, and, if the policy bore fruit, democratic government could become a reality. I do not deny that I planned sabotage. I did not plan it in a spirit of recklessness nor because I have any love of violence. I planned it as a result of a calm and sober assessment of the political situation that had arisen after many years of tyranny, exploitation and oppression of my people by the whites. After one has been in prison, it is the small things that one appreciates, being able to take a walk whenever one wants, going into a shop and buying a newspaper, speaking or choosing to remain silent. The simple act of being able to control one's person. People respond in accordance to how you relate to them. If you approach them on the basis of violence, that's how they'll react. But if you say, we want peace, we want stability, we can then do a lot of things that will contribute towards the progress of our society. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. It is better to lead from behind, and to put others in front, especially when you celebrate victory, when nice things occur. You take the front line when there is danger. Then people will appreciate your leadership. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Money won't create success, the freedom to make it will. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. There is nothing like returning to a place that remains unchanged to find the ways in which you, yourself, have altered. Our human compassion binds us the one to the other, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future. Courageous people do not fear forgiving for the sake of peace. It is wise to persuade people to do things and make them think it was their own idea. I should tie myself to no particular system of society other than of socialism. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. People respond in accordance to how you relate to them. If you approach them on the basis of violence, that's how they'll react. But if you say, we want peace, we want stability, we can then do a lot of things that will contribute towards the progress of our society. After one has been in prison, it is the small things that one appreciates, being able to take a walk whenever one wants, going into a shop and buying a newspaper, speaking or choosing to remain silent. The simple act of being able to control one's person. I will not leave South Africa, nor will I surrender. Only through hardship, sacrifice and militant action can freedom be won. The struggle is my life. I will continue fighting for freedom, until the end of my days. On the first day of school, my teacher, Miss Mdingane, gave each of us an English name, and said that from thenceforth that was the name we would answer to in school. This was the custom among Africans in those days and was undoubtedly due to the British bias of our education. The education I received was a British education, in which British ideas, British culture, British institutions, were automatically assumed to be superior. There was no such thing as African culture. In the 1940s, traveling for an African was a complicated process. All Africans over the age of 16 were compelled to carry native passes, issued by the Native Affairs Department, and were required to show that pass to any white policeman, civil servant, or employer. Failure to do so could mean arrest, trial, a jail sentence or fine. The titanic effort that has brought liberation to South Africa, and ensured the total liberation of Africa, constitutes an act of redemption for the black people of the world.